Hey everybody, Mark and Steve with a special holiday offer. We know that the holidays can be tough when you're dealing with addiction and betrayal trauma healing. And we know that as tough as they are, they also bring hope. How many of you guys remember this time last year when you said, you know what, this next year, 2025 is going to be the last year.
Oh man.
We got this addiction. We're going to fix this relationship. We're going to get ourselves on track. And now here we are a year later. So make this the year 2026 that you finally get this crazy mess out of your lives, both addicts and partners in healing. So from December 15th, 2025 through January 31st, 2026, in addition to the 2-week free trial that we always do, we're going to give you another $150 off of your first month's subscription.
All you got to do, guys, is at checkout, enter the coupon code 150 off D2C, all caps, no spaces. Honestly, when it comes to promotions that we do throughout the year, this is by far the best one that we do. That means for you and your partner, if you do the math, that's 6 weeks total of the Dare to Connect program, okay? For less than $150. I don't care where you live in the United States or anywhere else. That is less than the cost of a single therapy session. If you really want to start 2026 off right, jump into Dare to Connect, go to daretoconnectnow.com, enter in that coupon code 150 off D2C, and we hope to see you there in 2026.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the PBSC podcast. This is Mark and Steve. This is episode 312. My partner is in recovery. Should we let the past go and move on? Is there a place for grieving what was lost? That's really it's a great title there. It has a lot of important factors.
It's a great submission that came in.
It is, yeah. The submission that came in is so good from this partner. She says, hey guys, first I want to say I love your podcast and the fact that you're willing to answer tough questions that other podcasts seem to shy away from. You're welcome. Yeah, we're crazy.
Certifiable.
Anyway, my husband and I are 3.5 years into recovery from his porn addiction and emotional affairs. We unfortunately had multiple discoveries throughout our relationship where he finally confessed on his own without another discovery. But he totally gaslit me on all the others. So there was a lot of trickle disclosure over time. Then finally, it sounds like they had a final, accurate, full disclosure finally. Anyway, definitely a lot of trauma to process and work through. He is a completely different person now as a father and as a partner. However, the emotional and relational aspect has been a slow process. He is slowly getting better at being able to hear my pain and my triggers without shutting down and processing them with me. He is seeing a CSAT. I told him we need to be able to grieve what was lost and told him to ask his therapist about this. The therapist said he needs to focus more on growing and moving forward, which I think is important, but it's been hard to see true emotional remorse from my partner without the grief, if that makes sense. Anyway, I was hoping you guys could do an episode on grieving together and separately the losses of addiction and how that helps in the healing process. I hope that makes sense. Thank you again.
It's a really good submission.
Yeah, makes great sense, actually.
Well, and I don't know that we don't say this a whole lot, but I don't know that we've ever done an episode quite like this. in the 6 years we've been doing this podcast.
I don't know that we have either.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, we've touched on this topic before, but I don't think we've ever really had anyone write something this in depth. And it's a great topic because there's a real dance to this. It's a difficult topic. It's kind of the lesser talked about side of recovery for a coupleship, right? So often in recovery, the focus is on, the damage control and the all these different really intense things and getting into therapy and all of these things that are really relevant, but not enough is probably said about this side of, in those quiet moments when we're looking at the loss, when we're feeling what has gone for both an addict and a partner. I mean, what do you do with that? And what do you do with it as a coupleship?
Well, and I'm going to say something that might sound really strange to people listening, and we're going to talk about more about why this is true. But if we sidestep the grieving process as addicts or as partners or coupleships, we miss a beautiful opportunity for connection, for intimacy at a level that you probably have never experienced before. And when I say intimacy, I don't mean sex. I mean seeing each other, knowing each other, immersing in the realities of each other. I can't, I mean, so as we were preparing for this, Steve, I thought back to my early recovery and what my response would have been to this. And I'll tell you, why can't we just be positive and move on? Why do we have to keep digging up all the crap and being so negative? Now, I was one of the most negative people you've ever met, but people who tried to bring up negative stuff, I would immediately turn into the big positive, coach and pulpit pounding person. Why do we have to, we should just let the past be the past. Let sleeping dogs lie. And as I look at that, if as I've done my self work over the years, if I'm going to be really transparent and honest, what were my motives, my really deep motives in taking that approach? Well, I will tell you right now, it was enormously fear-based, shame-based. I didn't want to face the past and my mistakes. I already thought little of myself as it was. And to bring up more of that crap would just hammer me deeper into the dirt. And I didn't like facing hard things, let alone talking about them, processing through them, digging through them. That's what my addiction was all about, avoiding all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree. I mean, in my experience, in our experience, I think it's very difficult for most addicts, even fairly into the recovery process, in my experience, to healthily experience grief in that dynamic and loss, and then attach it to accountability without going to shame.
Oh my gosh. I found that impossible, what you just said years ago.
Really, really hard to do that. For most of us, as addicts, we struggle so much with accountability, and to be fair, it's not just addiction or the character deficits that accompany it that cause that. For many of us, we were raised in homes or in cultures where the line between accountability and shame was really blurry.
Well, what did we hear from tons of people around us about this whole issue? Don't air your dirty laundry. Don't bring the skeletons out of the closet. What are you doing? Right? We heard that all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you do, again, being accountable, right, means that has to be accompanied by a sense of, unworthiness or, prostration or, completely withdrawing. In fact, in Dare to Connect right now, this recording is happening during the holiday season, and we've been today we just released an episode for the addicts, a live session before our holiday about staying present and showing up and navigating the difficult emotions, attached to the process of the holidays, because of all the tradition, because of all of the triggers, because of all those things. That the holidays are a time of year, like other things, that are kind of geared towards making us like ponder, reflect, right? And so I think, and the reason why I bring that up is because this podcast is applicable to listen to any time of year, but it's very similar to a mindset that accompanies the grief, and loss. We're reflecting, right? We're looking backwards. We're looking back on the past. And
Well, and what can often happen with so many we work with, that's why we did some special sessions and recordings for our D2C people about the holidays. When I look back on the holidays in a certain mindset, it's really awful memories
oh yeah,
of all the
yeah,
holidays I ruined because of my addiction, all of the garbage that went on. The same thing happens when clients when they're experiencing anniversaries or birthdays or Valentine's Day, or right, the list goes on about the past and how terrible, and the grieving of it, right? And so one of the things, as we prepare, one of the things came to me is, so why bring up the past at all? Let's just move forward. Let's just let all that go and let's just move forward. That would have been an
yeah.
attitude I had years ago. Well, as I look, I can't imagine just trying to bury my whole past at this point in my recovery and healthy living. As an addict, I lived for decades in what Dr. Manwala calls a secret sexual basement. I intentionally manipulated my partner's reality, right? I led her to believe that our world was a certain way that it was not. And she did not know me, right? Because so much was hidden, so much was manipulated. And because she did not, quote, know me, what could she therefore not do from a fully informed place? She could not choose me. I had to decide if I was going to bring everything up out of that secret sexual basement and bring it into the upstairs to face. And that was crucial for me because as an addict, I had lived in the exact opposite place. I had avoided the hard. I had sidestepped around accountability. We hyphenate the ability to account for my actions, the ability to respond in my life. I allowed fear and shame and ego to keep me from facing my past. And it was crucial that I faced that. Again, we've been doing some recent work with Dr. Manwala. He calls that mountain work. Like you're standing up on a mountain as a guy and you're looking down in the valley at the village that you decimated over decades of behaviors. Imagine trying to help a village like that heal without facing all this and acknowledging it and grieving it and bringing it out into the open.
Yeah.
As the guy who caused the destruction, you could never help that village heal by doing it that way.
Well, the shame and the ego piece that Mark is mentioning right now, everybody is probably like public enemy number one when it comes to a grieving process. I think for a coupleship. I mean, I know for me, even though my history of deception looked different, there still was a lot of passive deception. I was terribly ignorant on a lot of levels. I tried to be as transparent with Brittany as possible, but the emotional variability, the what version of Steve am I going to get today, the complete emotional dysregulation, especially, was still very much present. And we see that dynamic with the guys that we work with now all the time. This grieving process itself, and this is important to say, this isn't in our show notes today, but it's just coming to mind. It's really critical that partners be validated, and guys, these addicts, we need to recognize that attempts to initiate the grieving process that we shut down because of our ego or because of shame not only is disruptive to that, but oftentimes places pressure, whether intentionally or not, on the partner to set aside her own pain and to now come and attend to ours, which in and of itself is additional collateral trauma.
That's right.
Because whether we're intending to or not, what are we saying? I'm not safe enough or strong enough or secure enough because I'm not doing what I need to be doing for you to show up with your pain that I caused. I need you to set aside your pain that I caused and attend to mine because I'm not learning and haven't grown in the ways to regulate in a way that allows me to show up and to be accountable so that I can participate with you in that process.
And Steve, what is one of the things we've heard from so many betrayed partners over the couple of decades? When my partner got into healing, into recovery and healing from his addiction, all the attention turned to him, and it's like I disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what all the stuff we've put betrayed partners through, it just sort of gets ignored in old models, and it's all about the addict. And lots and lots of clinical experience and research have shown that never turns out well, not for the partner or for the addict.
Yeah.
I thought of a little saying as we were preparing for this. You cannot heal what you are unwilling to face and to feel. You cannot heal what you are unwilling to face and to feel. And again, the facing the past and grieving is one of the primary, refusing to face the past and grieve it is one of the primary reasons we stay stuck in addiction.
100%.
And as hard as that grieving process is, starting with our partners, by the way, starting with our partners and what we've put them through and what they've lost and what we've lost, as hard as that process is, it is essential to intimacy and growth with ourselves and with each other.
Hey everybody, Mark and Steve here with a holiday offer for you as we enter into the Christmas and the New Year season. We know that recovery can be difficult, and we know as addicts in long-term recovery how hard it is to come into the holidays. You're looking back on the year, and here's another year where we haven't beaten this addiction. Here's another year where we're trapped in betrayal trauma. Here's another year where our coupleship is suffering. Well, right now, from December 15th, 2025 through January 31st of 2026, we are doing our annual holiday promotion. It's the best promotion that we do all year long to try to start 2026 off right. In addition to our 2-week free trial, we're also offering $150 off of your first month subscription here at Dare to Connect. All you need to do is use the code 150OFF D2C, all caps, no spaces when you check out.
And what that means is for both you as you're an addict in recovery and partners in betrayal trauma healing, that's 6 weeks of our Dare to Connect program for less than $150. That's less than the cost of one therapy session just about anywhere. So come and join us. Be sure again at checkout to enter that code 150OFF D2C, all caps. And we'll look forward to seeing you on our D2C program.
We will catch you all in 2026. I mean, if we can't exercise or practice that form of intimacy, think about the cost to safety, for example, to a partner, right? It represents a void in the relationship that still remains uncertain. It still remains unshaky. And at least on the partner's end, creates, again, very unsure footing when it comes to her being able to be human in this process. One of the more revelatory things that came up in my work with Brittany when we were in therapy was coming to a real understanding that Brittany never felt like she could be human in our relationship. And that may sound weird, but let me explain. She felt like because I was so emotionally everywhere, that she had to be the grounding source for all things in the relationship. For her, for me, for us, for self-preservation. In other words, she wasn't allowed to have a bad day. She wasn't allowed to be off her game. She wasn't allowed to grieve. She wasn't allowed to mourn. Because if she did, the consequences were tremendous. Right? I wasn't regulating healthily. I wasn't able to show up for those things. And so every time we would try to move forward in recovery in different ways, when we would come up against these kinds of exchanges, whether it was around grieving the past or accountability, it would just short circuit all the progress that we would have.
Yeah. No, it was exactly the same with my wife. Exactly what you're describing. She called it walking on eggshells for decades.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we had 5 sons. She said I was raising 6 boys. And she knew that if she got real or honest, or that there was a place for her pain or her sadness or her grieving, that she would pay a big price if she dared to express that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again is the exact opposite, right? Because grieving is supposed to be a processing experience. It's supposed to be something that we're moving through, that we're attending to, not something that should be the source of even more additional pain.
Well, and so, and maybe to help people that are listening to this, imagine that I was somebody who constantly drank irresponsibly. And one day I was out driving when I should not have been driving. and I cross the median and I smash head first, have a head-on collision and just obliterate the person in the other car. And now they're laying in the hospital in traction with all these tubes and wires coming off of them. They're looking forward to years of physical therapy just to be able to walk again and to function properly. And I look at them and say, we're not going to talk about any of that happened. That's in the past. Let's just let it be.
Yeah.
Let's just move forward.
We can have a good relationship if we just, move on.
Yeah, we just need to move on.
But if we ever go back and address that or talk about it, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, imagine what that would be like.
And that's what we are unwittingly doing, gentlemen, when we again, whether we actively show up and say, I don't want to talk about it, but here's the other critical piece, because I think the majority of those listening, and we appreciate you listening, if you are listening, would fall into the second category, where you are unintentionally, but nevertheless, because of not doing the work or not getting to a point or not making progress in the right ways to be a secure base for your partner, you're unwittingly doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You're showing up as an unsafe, we call it an unsafe landing space for your partner. There's nowhere to land. There's not a spot where they can sit down, set, and say, this is how I'm really doing.
Yeah. And what is part of our response? What is a big part of our responsibility as addicts? We can't heal for our partners.
No.
We can't do the physical therapy. We can't lay in the hospital bed and go through all the stuff in the example I gave. But what can we do? We can create amazing environments where healing is helped. Healing is accelerated. Healing is made as optimal as possible. We as addicts who've done the damage can create those environments. And a big part of that is this facing of the past. This coming, right, Steve, you and I talk all the time, for example, about a formal disclosure process, formal therapeutic disclosure process. That disclosure process, which takes months to complete and has many critical components, is all about, in many ways, what we're talking about today. Can you imagine trying to do a full disclosure with disclosure, impact, and amends, and not visit the past and go through a grieving process?
Well, since if you take that out of the disclosure, that's sort of like removing the dough from a chocolate chip cookie, right?
Right, what do you have?
If you have very little left, right? If you remove that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it would be absolutely impossible. And it is important that, there, and we will acknowledge something, right? When we talk about healing, there are elements to, the healing process, even when it happens in the most optimal way, whether it's physically or emotionally, there are scars, right?
Yes.
Moving through trauma means just that. It means moving through. It means working through. It doesn't mean erasure.
No.
There is no taking back action. There's no removing this from the relationship. And there are pros and cons to that we talk about on other episodes. But we can't do any of that work if there isn't safety first. If a partner is not feeling that safety and that confidence to be able to do that, at least as far as the relationship goes, she's not going to be able to do that. And something scary can happen, gentlemen who are listening. She might find herself growing and evolving and grieving and learning to do all of that without you.
Without you. Yeah. Which you don't want, because if I were to try to help all of you see the amazing end of this path of grieving individually and together, it's the hardest thing that my partner and I have ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting in the pain together, especially me sitting with her pain. But I'm going to tell you, it's been the most connecting and intimate thing we've ever experienced. Crying together, weeping together, holding each other, right? Me leaning in and sitting with her in the pain, especially when she didn't even realize that there were certain things that had taken place. She didn't even realize any of that until disclosure happened.
Yeah.
Now to look back at a past that you thought was one way and realize that it wasn't. It was an intentionally manipulated reality. Imagine the pain from that and the grieving of a past that you didn't even know is what it was.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and there will always be, and if this process doesn't happen, guys, does that mean that a relationship is completely doomed? No. But like any other element of intimacy, you rapidly will find that anytime there are holes in the relationship where we can't go or we can't tread, there's no way around the fact that that comes at a heavy cost to connection. It just does.
Yeah.
And so you may not be there today. Everyone listening is at a different point in this process, but we have to be shoring up as addicts and as partners. Partners need to be getting to a place where they can express in healthy ways their grief and come to grips with the emotions. On us addicts, it's on us squarely, first of all, to be transparent, as we've been talking about, but then also to be doing the work as quickly as possible in concert with our own healing and gaining sobriety, to be building a base that involves shame resilience, that involves transparency, the capacity to be accountable, and to be that place where a partner can come when they're not having a good day. As long as your partner feels like they've got to be Superwoman, they can't be your wife. That's what I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Superwoman's awesome, but Superwoman's really hard to connect with.
Well, and going to this place as an addict who caused the damage, right? Our partners didn't deserve this. They didn't ask for it. They weren't expecting it. In many ways, it blindsided them. It wasn't in harmony with the agreement and contract we entered into at the beginning of the relationship in any way. Right. And sometimes as we started to go through this grieving process, I allowed it, because of my shame, my fear, my ego, to become kind of a competition.
Mm.
Well, I did that to you, but look what you did to me.
Sure.
And we have to be very careful of that as addicts in recovery if we're going to lean in and help our partners heal. There's a place for us to express our pain and the causes of but we have to be careful of the timing of that and when that comes forth, so it doesn't become this competition or our defense mechanisms about it.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, guys, we want to give some really square advice to the addict as you are preparing to try to create this space. Okay. As we've talked about, obviously addressing grief and these kinds of feelings is often difficult. Can we be real? I mean, feelings are not most of our default speed, especially early on in this process. It's this never-ending conundrum because we are biologically wired for connection, but we've grown up in environments and engaged in behaviors that stand as the enemy of everything that connection stands for. And so we find ourselves kind of in this weird dichotomy, and we have to be getting to that place where we are getting better at acknowledging feelings in general. But you expressing what you have lost and given up and damaged, not just in her world, but also in yours and in other areas, is really critical to this process. But there are some things to keep in mind when doing this. Okay. First, empathy first for your partner and their pain. Before we're even going to talk about a space of expression for yours and connecting with her, because that's one of the main reasons why it's important to be able to do that, is finding that common ground and creating collaboration between the two of you. You have to do everything that we talked about already. Okay. So that's got to happen first. And you have to develop out that skill set, not to just cultivate empathy, but as Mark was talking about, stay empathetic when it starts getting tough. When she starts to really express feelings and emotions that are difficult, we have to have done that emotional work to be able to remain present when those kinds of things are going on. So the timing on this is absolutely critical. Okay. Depending on where you are at and where your partner's at in this recovery and healing journey, sharing feelings about your own loss in addiction and the damage you've caused, it may or may not be appropriate right now. And that depends on levels of trust and among other factors. So for example, let's say that you are in a place where trust has not hit kind of that sufficient critical mass. Your partner's expressing and you're saying, I can really connect with some of those feelings that you're describing, even though it's different. When I did these other things, how might that come off to a partner where low trust is present? Here he goes, making it about him.
Yes.
Right? Here's the deflection. Here's the shift. We're not talking about my pain anymore. We're making the shift, right, to his stuff. Mm-hmm. And so being able to recognize and make clear again, that recognizing that timing is important, that empathy is critical, and that if needed, and if you're questioning it, asking your partner if this could be helpful. Once we start lining all of those kinds of things up is when we start to having cleared it with our therapist if we're working one, if we having kind of checked with our partner, would it be helpful? If I was to talk about some of the things that maybe I've experienced similar along those lines, or would that not be helpful right now? Making sure that we develop out and we cultivate and be the leader in expressing and creating an environment where we make it clear there's room enough in the room for everyone's pain here. I can tell you firsthand for me and Brittany, and it wasn't really Brittany, it was mostly me. I had a very difficult time with this side of emotional intelligence, this recognition that both of our pain can be in the room. It was very hard for me to do that. My go-to was always like, crap, she's saying hard stuff. I'm feeling inadequate. I'm feeling shame. Well, what about me? Right? I'm feeling hard stuff too. Like me too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's room enough in the room for that when the timing's right. But again, we have to be able to develop that emotional fortitude to be present with her stuff first. We let out in causing the pain. Logic would dictate that we lead out in providing security in the expression of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I love that.
So always seeking to proactively suggest solutions or steps you can take to assist in her journey, but also being open to answers she gives, and can't emphasize that part enough, is critical. If you are not open to her, for example, this was hard for me. This is a hard pill to swallow. Sometimes there were times where I would say, "Hun, what can I do for you?" And she would do it in a very loving way. She was really good about it. But if you read between the lines, you can go take a long walk off a short cliff right now. I can't do this with you right now. I'm not in a space. I'm not in a headspace. What I need from you is just no engagement. And again, what is that? If I'm not doing my own work, blow to my ego, blow to my pride.
Oh, yeah.
And then what do? I react, and I do what? I fulfill and confirm every fear in her head about my lack of safety.
Yeah.
See, he's not a safe space to talk about this stuff with. I knew it. I knew he wasn't. Right? So,
Well, we really appreciated this submission.
great submission.
Grieving is a deep, deep dive. If you're having questions about this, we would encourage all of you to do some research. You'll have myriad resources come up about the benefits of grieving, difficult past trauma, the importance of grieving for an addict in recovery. Do some work to go look at this side of things. It is powerful, and it is essential to the recovery and healing processes. So we really encourage you to look at it more deeply. And as always, if you have questions for us about you want addressed on the PBSE podcast, go to our website, daretoconnectnow.com. And at the top, you'll see the PBSE banner. Click on that. And then on that page, you'll see a contact form. We're about 3 or 4 weeks out on those questions. If you want your questions and situations addressed immediately, come and join with us and Dare to Connect. We're actually running our annual special right now where you get $150 off your first month in D2C, in addition to the free 2-week trial.
So 6 months of the program for way less than the cost of a therapy session.
Yeah, your first 6 weeks in the program, less than the cost of a single therapy session.
And just for those who are listening to this recorded, that promotion this is recorded in 2025. That's running through 12/15 of 25 through January 31st of 2026.
Yep.
So, yep.
Would love to have you come over and join us in D2C. We have a amazing experience with everybody.
Just use coupon code 150 off D2C, all caps, no spaces when you check out. Okay.
At checkout. Yeah. Yep. All right, guys. Hey, take care. We'll see you next time in our next episode.
Have a great one.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.